and welcome to another workshop. I am the Deputy Head of Teaching at Abstract, which is an art and design club, and today I'm just going to be covering the basics of animation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly run through some terminology so you guys know what I'm referring to throughout the video, and then I will be hopping on to Blender, which is a free animation application that you guys can download. Link to that will be in the description. And I'll be teaching you how to make a very basic, very common beginner activity, which is the ball bounce practice. Okay, so we're going to start off with a bit of terminology. There are a couple things in animation that you guys need to keep in mind. So there is the timeline, which represents the animation's progress over time. And this is what it will look like. It's this entire bar, which will be at the bottom of your screen. I'll show you where that is later. Then you have frame rates, which are the number of individual images that are displayed over the span of a single second. Now, usually in most animations, this is done in 24 seconds per frame, but you can always change it up if you like. It's just a standard. Next, we have a scene or shot, which in animation refers to one specific piece of animation, which is continuous and happens between camera cuts. And then we have keyframes, breakdown, and in-betweens. Now, this varies a bit between handmade or hand-drawn animation and 3D animation. So hand-drawn would also technically refer to what we're doing now because it's 2D, right? We're not going to be doing any 3D animations today. So keyframes basically in 2D, you guys can read this bottom part if you like, just for your own information, you can pause the video, but I'll just be covering 2D. So keyframes represent major or most important poses which define a scene. So for example, you can see here at the bottom, this would be an example of a keyframe, or 3 different keyframes, right? So here's the walking motion, here's the picking up motion, and here's the drawing on the board motion. Then breakdowns define the motion from key to key. So they're kind of like between those two, like those keyframes, right? So you have, for example, here at the bottom, you see here he's stepping forward, now he's lifting his leg, putting it down again. It's kind of a more detailed breakdown of the keyframes. And then in-betweens are basically all of the frames that come between breakdowns to make it all smooth. And this is where it kind of looks a bit messy and a bit hard to do. But yeah, so basically it's all of the motions that make it look like a single moving image. Then lastly, we have spacing, easing, and timing. So spacing refers to the amount of change that comes between each frame. So to decrease space makes an object slower, and increasing space makes it look faster. It basically just means that you're doing something fast. Like, how do you say? You time them differently. So for example, if this spacing is large, then this will happen slower because there's more space between them. But if the space is more compact, it will happen faster. Easing refers to how spacing is controlled, which is usually through a motion graph on timeline, but we won't be covering that today, so no need to worry about that. And then timing refers to the total number of frames that will be used for a movement. I know that might have been quite a bit to remember, but don't worry, I'll just run through everything that is necessary to be run through when we get to that. So once you open Blender, you'll be shown to this page. Your image here might look a bit different, that's fine, depending on which version you downloaded, or, you know, yeah, there are many different reasons, but point is you'll have this kind of area where you can choose which kind of animation you want to do. So today we're going to be doing 2D animation. So you're going to go down under new file, the second one, which says 2D animation, and you're just going to click on that. and this is what you'll get. Now, this might be quite overwhelming if you're new to animation, which I'm supposing you are, considering these are the basics. So just try not to get lost in all of this, because we're only going to fix in on what's really important. So if you just follow along, you should get the gist pretty quickly. You can try this out a couple of times, and once you get an understanding of what everything is, where everything is, and how the tools kind of work, you can move on to stuff that's a bit more complex. So the first thing I'm going to address is the timeline, which is right here. This whole, whoopsies, if this happens to you, which I'll discuss later, there's an easy way to fix that. If you're new, you might find this a bit confusing. It tends to change the perspective, and that's easily fixed. But yeah, so this is the the timeline. And this is where you kind of control your keyframes, in-betweens, and all of that good stuff. So if this happens to you, which it's very likely to happen because it's basically you just moving around the screen, right? If this happens, all you need to do is click the X, right? So here at the top panel, you have all of these different vectors, or just click on the X or the red, and that'll bring you back to X, right? The red little dot or the X, and that'll bring you back to X, and now you are back into drawing mode. It's pretty fun to actually mess around with the perspective though, once you finished your animation, because it allows you to actually look at what you're doing from different angles, and it's just fun to see how something 2D is moving around, but I'll show you that later. So yeah, I'm gonna go back here. Next, we have layers. So if you guys aren't familiar with digital art platforms, layers are very, very important. In my opinion, it's one of the most important aspects of digital art. And it's when I'm teaching someone digital art of any sort and layers are involved, it's the first thing I get to. Because what layers basically do is it allows you to make an image in different steps, right? So imagine it like a sketch that you've done on paper, and then you put a piece of plastic on top of that paper. Whatever you do on the plastic will not affect the paper, but you can still see the paper because the plastic is transparent, right? So if I paint on the plastic, then I can kind of imagine what the finished product would look like without actually destroying what I'm already happy with, right? So for example, the sketch. In animation, we also have layers, which are here. So this is a layer, for example, that's a layer. All of these different bars here, they're different layers, and you select them by clicking on them. You can create a new layer by clicking on the plus button, which is right next to frame at the top of your timeline, right? And you can delete a layer by clicking the negative button, which is right next to the plus button. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to select the line tools. Here you have a couple tools. Make sure this is on draw. If it's not, then you can just click this at the top left of your screen and just click on draw, all right? This way you'll have this, arrangement of tools. We're going to click on the line tool, which is just this green tool that is a straight line. And you're going to press down and drag it across the screen. Now, this is going to be our floor, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to drag it across the screen. You're going to let go. And this isn't a finished line. What you need to do to make sure that you can do something else, because as you can see here, I'm trying to press around, but I can't do anything. That's because this hasn't been certified, I guess, or you haven't validated it. So what you need to do is you need to press your enter button, and now the line's actually there. You can tell by whether or not they're these yellow circles, which allow you to move them around. So if I have this, these yellow circles, that means it's not actually there, so to say. Now, when I click enter, then you'll see that those circles disappear and the line's just there. Now, that's our floor. To erase something or to go back a single move, you can just hit Command Z, and that should delete your line. Next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the circle tool. And the reason why we're not drawing everything ourselves today is because I kind of want you guys to get familiar with the basics and kind of have a smooth running animation before you guys hop on to something a bit more difficult. Again, once you've done this a couple of times and you're happy and you're comfortable with it, you can move on to a really good video that I found, which is actually exactly like this. It's the ball bounce animation, just that you're drawing it yourself, right? So you can go check that out. It's in the description box below. And it'll be really cool if you guys want to actually learn how to draw your own. But for now, let's just get used to, you know, this whole mess. Right, so you click the circle tool and you click down, drag, and let go. Again, hit enter, and that will be your ball. That's the ball that you're going to be using. Now this is just a draft. I have to address that. This layer is just going to be our sketch of what we actually want to do, right? So we're going to plan out where we want everything to be so that we don't get confused, right? So next we're going to go to this pencil or draw tool, which is at the very top of the toolbar. And we are going to just draw an arc going down, showing where more or less you want your ball to go, right? So it's going to drop down here. Okay, hold on, that's a bit messy. It's going to drop down here. And for this tool, you don't need to hit enter, it just works. And then it's going to go back up here, and it's going to not go as high because of conservation of energy, right? So it loses some energy and then it bounces back up. Then it bounces back down here. Then it'll go back up. Again, it loses some energy, so it's not going to go as high. Go back down, and then it's going to bounce off into the oblivion that we don't have to worry about anymore, right? So this is how the ball is going to move, right? So it's going to hit the floor 3 times. Once here, you can make a cross on that. Once here, and once here. Right? This is our plan. This is basically what we want the ball to do, right? So now that we have this sketched out and we kind of know what we want to do, we're going to go, like, make sure that you're on the same layer, right? So I'm not going to click off, go to a different layer and then do this. I'm going to make sure that what I've drawn and what I'm about to do is on the same layer. And I'm going to go right here to this lock button. I'm going to click it, and now this layer is locked. What this means is whenever I select something, it's not going to select this, which is important because this is our layout, this is our sketch, and I don't want to be moving our sketch when I'm moving other objects. So once you've made sure that that is closed, you can go to add new layer, which is the plus button. Click that, and now you have a new layer. You can rename it and just say like official or something like that, just so you know that this is the layer where your actual work is going to be on, right? And make sure that it's selected. It'll be green if it's selected. And just for your information, you can rename it just by double clicking it, right? So now you have this new layer where we're actually going to get into the actual animation. So the first thing I'm going to go to is the start and end, right, which will control the timing. You can stretch and compress the timing yourself with the timeline, but since that's a bit more advanced and it's not the best to learn as a beginner, we're just going to be messing with intervals instead of actually stretching or compressing the piece. So we're going to let it start at 1 because we don't want to go into negatives. And we're going to change the end to 40 because 250 is quite a long time. So this means there are going to be 40 frames. And you can see that that just cut down to 40. This part is highlighted, and then this part is dark, which shows you that you'll be working on this side. Right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to redraw the circle, right? We're going to select the circle tool again, We're going to press, we're going to click down, and then we're just going to mess with these two circles. We're going to pull them until they match our sketch. It doesn't have to be that way, but I just know that this is the size that I want. So I'm just going to leave it like that. Right. Hit enter. And now we're going to move to our first interval, which will be 15 seconds, I believe. Let me just see that real quick. Yep. Okay. 15 seconds. So you just drag, you go back to your timeline and you just drag the blue bar basically to 15, right? So we're on 15 there. Now we're on a completely different frame, right? So what I do here isn't really going to affect anything that's happened before that mark. I'm going to click Tab A, and this will allow me to select. As you see, it's turned orange. Now, if I hadn't closed this bottom layer, I would have selected everything, and if I start trying to move it, then it's going to move the entire screen, and that's not fun. We don't want that. So always make sure that layer is closed. Tab A is edit mode, right? So that's the Apple setting though, I believe. So just find the equivalent of Tab A, or you can just go back to this, this bar at the top and switch from draw to edit mode. That works too. That's just, the Tab A is just a shortcut. Then you hit G, and G will allow you to move the object, right? This is what G allows you to do. So what's important to know with G is once you hit it, you're already grabbing it. So you don't need to press down. If you press down, then it won't move because you're letting it go again, right? So what you do is you go to the next peak, right? The next peak, and let your ball go, right? So this is a keyframe, so to say. That's a keyframe. That's going to be a keyframe, and the other thing's going to be a keyframe. So what we're going to do next, is we're just going to go to 10 frames after this one, right? So we're just going to go to 25, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Hit G, and then we're going to move it to this peak. Then we're going to do another one, but this time it's only going to be 5 away. So we're just going to go to 30. And then this one you can just G and bring down to this X. And then you'll do another 3, so 33, and then G to the top here. Now, if you hit your space bar, you'll be able to see this progression, right? So this is a nice progression. It's nice and smooth. But now we have to move the ball down to the bottom parts here. So we're going to go in between these two intervals. So you can see each keyframe has like a little diamond associated with it. So that's how you know there's something there, right? So you just go in between those two. So for 15, that would probably be 7 or 8, right? 7.5. And then you just hit G again and you move it to the middle. And you just repeat for all of these. So one, where's that here? Right, my bad. I still need to move that down to the bottom. So just do that. Let me see if that works. Yeah, okay, perfect. Missed a step there. Okay. So yeah, then for 25, that would be 20. So we're just going to move this down here to the X. We're going to go in between. You can always check where what is by just dragging the timeline, right? You can just see where everything is at what point. So here that goes up, that goes down, and that goes up. Okay, perfect. So now if I play it, this is what's happening, right? You just hit space to play. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to get in between the ball being up in the air and on the floor, right, at the X. So again, you just go in between those two events, right, those two Keyframes, I'm not really breaking them down into any other frames because that's like a whole other thing to discuss. You don't really need to have different markings for them, as long as you know that in between each diamond you're going to have space to mess around with. Hit G again, move it to the middle, and you're going to go in between these two. I'm just going to hit G, move it to the middle again. And now what's important to realize is the fact that I'm splitting this up into intervals, right? 15, 10, 5, and roughly 3. The fact that I'm doing that is going to create spacing. It's going to create a longer time, right? Because when a ball falls here, it's going to take longer than it's going to take for this to come back up and then bounce back down. You'll see that it gradually gets faster, right? And that's what it basically does, and that's what the stretch option can do, but it just also works with good planning. All right, so then we're gonna go in between these two, hit G, move down, go between these two, rinse and repeat, G, move up, then go in between these two, G, down, and then let me see which one's 30 and then 33. So go with like 31 or 32. Just try to get 32. There you go. G and then move it here. Now if I hit space, you'll see that this is happening, right? So it's gradually getting faster and faster as it goes. And it's also hitting the peaks at different levels because it's losing energy. Right. Now we're going to create a stretch and a squash effect. Now these are two elements of, or principles of animation. I believe it was Disney, I'm not quite sure, but they have 12 principal elements of animation, and I'll link a website to that in the description below. You guys can just take a look at it, because if you master those 12 elements, you're basically equipped with all of the basic knowledge you need to really have fun with animation. All right, so we're gonna go back to the beginning and we're going to start this squashing and so what sequence. So for that, we're gonna stay on edit mode. We're going to go down to this Xbox control looking button here, which is called transform. So you just click on that and you should get these vertices. So what this does, the green arrow controls your your horizontal shift. The blue button controls your, let me see if I can get that. Yeah, no, okay. It's too far off my screen. It's up there. So that's not really gonna work, but what it does is it just controls your vertical positioning. So it's exactly like the green button. Just imagine this going up and down. Next, you have the red button, which basically just rotates your shape. As you can see, since I kind of messed up with that a bit, you'll see that that kind of changed the object. Then within the red circle, you have your vertical squash, right? Where you can just pull it or bring it back together. And then the green one is vertical, so you can stretch it horizontally. I'm so sorry, horizontally. So what we're gonna do is we're going to, since it's at the very beginning, we're going to kind of make it droop downwards a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to bring it down vertically a little bit, right? So I'm gonna make it a bit more ovular. And I'm going to stretch it vertically just a little bit so it looks like that. And then I'm going to take the red control and I'm going to bring it to an angle that goes down. And I'm going to repeat this for all of my frames. So here I'm going to bring this down a little bit like that, squash it out a little bit like this. So at this point, it's kind of going down here, so it's something like that, right? Then you go down here. Here it gets squashed completely. So we're going to make it real narrow, and we're going to use this blue button, right? The vertical up or down, and we're going to bring it to this X. And then we're going to here, we're going to squish it a little bit again. It's going to be a bit more rounded because, you know, it's not getting squashed anymore. We're going to rotate it upwards. And then this at the top, this is where it regains its shape a little. So I'm just going to very slightly make that a bit more narrow, but we're going to leave it mostly like that. And then we just repeat for all of these other ones. Rotate it so it's going down like this. And then let's find that one. Yep, here. We're going to squash it again, so it's going to be really narrow. And then we're going to bring it down to the X, which is the floor, which is why it's so important to have your sketch out, so you're not just, you know, messing with nothing and you're not really sure where you're placing it. So I'm just going to repeat that for all of these. I'm going to move it like this. Back up here, it's regained most of its form, so I'm just going to make that very, very slight change. Then it's going back down again. Turn it, then here, we have another one, so we're gonna squash that completely again, bring it down to the X, and then we have this right here, bring it up again, and then there, we're gonna make it narrow again. We're just going to have it fly off the screen, right? And now when you hit space, you'll have that, oh my God, I actually did something feeling, where you can see this animation playing out really nicely. So there's your moving ball. You can see how it's getting faster. You can see how it's squishing and it's regaining its shape at the top. And yeah, you can just watch it in action, and it's pretty fun. It's pretty cool. So congratulations. If you made it to this point, you've completed your first very basic animation, which allows you to kind of eye in on the most essential tools of the platform. And, you know, you can just enjoy that win. From here on, you can just practice this, you know, a couple more times. Once you can do this without the tutorial video, you can move on to trying to, you know, draw it yourself and make the ball a color, or, you know, give the ball a face, or, you know, stuff like that. Or you can try 3D animation, and you can see how that's different to 2D animation. There's a lot you can explore, and it's a really exciting medium. So I hope that this shows you guys kind of what you can do. There will be those pretty cool videos that you can try out, like different tutorials on Blender that you can try out for 2D and 3D animation, which will be in the description box. And I hope you guys just had fun and kind of learned the basics, and, you know, really enjoyed that process. That's all for today. I hope this taught you something, and that you now have a new fun passion for animation, I guess. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.